347 women had entered the Alpha King's chambers. Every one of them had left changed. Some stopped speaking. One threw herself from the North Tower. Then the king looked at me, a wolfless Omega, my own father considered expendable, and asked why I had come. I gave him the answer no noble woman before me had dared to give. He laughed once and said, "Finally," but the true challenge had not even begun, and something inside those chambers was waiting to test the one truth I had spent my whole life refusing to face. Chapter 1. The morning they came to collect the debt, I was in the courtyard garden, pulling weeds from between cracked stones with fingers that were already bleeding. Years earlier, I had stopped wearing gloves. Whenever I found a pair, my father took them and sold them, accusing me of getting ideas above my place. Even the tiny rebellion of trying to keep my hands soft had died with the last of my hope that he might someday see me as anything more than a burden. "Camila." My father's voice cut across the morning like a whip. "Get inside, now." I didn't hurry. Moving too eagerly only gave him another reason to despise me. I rose slowly, wiped the dirt from my hands onto my stained apron, then entered our pack house through the rear door. The servants' entrance. The entrance for people like me. Inside, the main hall smelled of fear, sweat, and desperation. My father, Garrett Perez, stood near the center of the room. He had once been beta of the Riverside Pack, before gambling debts stripped him of his title, his influence, and almost everything else he owned. His shoulders were hunched in a way I recognized immediately. He had already made a decision, and I was going to hate it. My half-sister Lydia sat on the edge of my mother's old chair. Her perfect blonde hair caught the morning light, and the wolf beneath her skin seemed almost content. Across from them sat Collector Voss. Everyone knew Voss. He collected taxes for the Alpha King, enforced royal debts, and occasionally acquired unusual things for the crown. That morning, apparently, I was one of those things. His expensive suit looked deliberately out of place in our deteriorating home. His gaze moved over me with the detached concentration of a man examining livestock. "This is the other daughter?" "Yes," my father answered without looking at me. "Camila. She's 22, healthy, obedient." Obedient. The word turned bitter in my mouth. Voss opened a leather-bound ledger and raised his pen. "Can she shift?" Silence filled the room. Lydia's smile sharpened. My father finally answered. "No, she never developed her wolf." Voss's pen stopped. One eyebrow lifted slightly. Among werewolves, a wolfless Omega was barely considered useful. I had wolf blood, but no wolf, no transformation, no strength, no place in the hierarchy. "I see." Voss made a note. "That complicates matters. But she's educated," my father said quickly. "She can read and write. She teaches the pack pups their letters. She's..." He gestured toward me as though my body might complete the sentence for him. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead, I stood motionless with my bleeding fingers hidden inside the folds of my apron, and waited for my father to finish selling me. "The debt your family owes the crown is substantial, Mr. Perez," Voss said. He closed the ledger with a quiet snap. 15,000 gold pieces, 3 years of unpaid taxes, plus accumulated interest. The Alpha King has shown remarkable patience. "I can get the money," my father said. It was a lie. "I just need more time." "Your time is gone." Voss stood. The room somehow felt colder. "You have 2 options. Surrender the property and all remaining assets. By my estimate, that will cover roughly 1/3 of the debt. Afterward, you will face imprisonment for tax evasion." He paused. "Or," my father's voice cracked, "or, you provide a candidate for the Alpha King's challenge." Lydia shot to her feet. "The challenge?" Her face went pale. "But hundreds of she-wolves have already tried. Everyone says it's impossible." 347, Voss corrected. "Every one of them failed. His Majesty is becoming impatient. The candidate pool has therefore been expanded to include women from families carrying significant royal debt." His expression remained calm. Consider it an opportunity for redemption. My father turned toward Lydia. Lydia could do it. For one brief second, something resembling love appeared on his face. She's strong. Her wolf is powerful. She would make a perfect... No. Lydia's answer came instantly. Father, you can't ask me to do that. I'm engaged to Thomas. Our mating ceremony is planned for spring. I am not sacrificing my future for some cursed king's impossible riddle. Participation alone clears the debt, Voss said mildly. Success is not required. Any eligible woman who undertakes the challenge absolves her family of all financial obligations to the crown. I watched my father's face. I saw the calculation. Lydia was the daughter of his true mate, his beautiful daughter, his second chance to regain respectability through a favorable mating. Then there was me, the daughter of the woman who had died giving birth to me, the daughter who couldn't shift, the daughter whose existence seemed to remind him of everything he had lost. What about Camilla? The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Lydia turned toward me. Shock crossed her face first. Then relief. Then something that almost looked like pity. Finally, vindication. Voss studied me carefully. She has no wolf. But she's educated, my father said. You said the challenge involves a riddle. Camilla is clever. She's always reading something. His desperation strengthened with every word. And she's... He hesitated, then said it. She's expendable. There it was. Not brave. Not intelligent. Not capable. Not deserving of a chance. Expendable. I waited for rage. For tears. For some final piece inside me to shatter. Nothing came. I had learned long ago that emotions were luxuries people like me couldn't afford. So when I spoke, my voice was calm. I'll do it. Every face turned toward me. My father actually looked confused. You'll do what? I'll participate in the Alpha King's challenge. I looked directly at Voss, in exchange for my family's debt being forgiven. Something flashed across the collector's expression. Surprise. Perhaps respect. It disappeared almost immediately. The challenge carries risks, he warned. His voice was different now, no longer entirely detached. Every woman who has attempted it has come away changed. Some suffer night terrors. Some refuse to speak about what they experienced. One woman threw herself from the North Tower 3 days after failing. I understand. Do you? Voss leaned slightly toward me. The Alpha King is cursed, Miss Perez. His 3 forms are not ordinary transformations. They represent fragmented pieces of a broken whole. You will be required to spend time alone with him inside his private chambers. Whatever occurs there remains between the candidate and the king. The implication settled heavily over the room. Lydia made a disgusted sound. I ignored her. When do we leave? Voss watched me for another long moment. Tomorrow at dawn. Bring nothing. The palace will provide everything required. Lydia stared at me. She's actually doing this. Apparently. Voss tucked his ledger beneath his arm. Mr. Perez, the moment Miss Camilla formally participates, your debt will be considered satisfied regardless of the result. You have my word and the king's seal. He removed a document from inside his jacket and placed it on the table. My father's hands trembled when he reached for it. Voss moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. His eyes returned to me. The king asks every candidate the same question before the challenge begins. What question? Why have you come? He studied me. Most answer ambition, duty, destiny. I find myself curious about what your answer will be. Then he left. The faint scent of his expensive cologne lingered behind him. So did the sound of my father's relieved breath. Lydia spoke first. You're really going, Camilla? Yes. They say he's a monster. Women come back broken, if they come back at all. Better me than you. She flinched. Good. Let her remember that her perfect engagement, her perfect mating ceremony, and her perfect future had been purchased with my expendability. My father finally looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. Camila, I don't. I raised one bleeding hand. Don't. His mouth closed. Don't pretend this is anything except what it is. You're trading me for your comfort, exactly the way you've traded pieces of me my entire life. My voice stayed steady. At least this time, I get something from it. What could you possibly get? Lydia asked. I smiled, although it felt more like reopening a wound. Away from here. That night, I didn't pack. There was nothing I owned worth taking. Instead, I sat in the tiny room I'd slept in for years, a room barely larger than a closet, and finally allowed myself to feel everything I'd kept buried. The grief of never being wanted, the anger of being considered disposable, the hollow pain of watching my father choose Lydia's safety without even hesitating over mine. But beneath those feelings, something unfamiliar stirred. Curiosity. 347 women had tried the challenge. Powerful she-wolves, alpha daughters, beta strategists, warriors, scholars, noble women. Every one of them had entered the king's chambers. Every one had left defeated. What waited inside? What was the riddle? What could the Alpha King possibly be searching for that none of those women had been able to give him? And why did some quiet instinct inside me whisper that perhaps the thing everyone called my greatest defect was exactly what made me different? I crossed the room and placed my wounded fingertips against the window. Far beyond the riverside pack, the capital lay beneath the night sky, its palace towers piercing the darkness like distant promises. Tomorrow I would meet the cursed Alpha King. Tomorrow I would face whatever had broken 347 women. If being nothing meant I had nothing left to lose, perhaps I also had nothing left to fear. Wolves howled somewhere beyond the trees. My blood responded to the sound with an ache that never disappeared. I wanted to join them. To feel my bones shift. To become something larger, faster, stronger. I closed my eyes and imagined running on 4 legs, wind tearing through my fur, while the earth shook beneath my paws. When I opened them, nothing had changed. I was still Camila, still wolfless, still unwanted, still alone. I looked toward the moon. Let's see if that's enough. The moon gave me no answer. It never had. Chapter 2. The Beautiful Prison. Dawn arrived both too quickly and not quickly enough. I stood in the courtyard wearing the only clothes I had, a plain gray dress repaired so many times that the original fabric seemed more memory than material. My father waited near the gate. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Lydia watched from her bedroom window, her face pale in the early morning light. Voss arrived in a black carriage drawn by 4 enormous horses. Each animal probably cost more than everything my father had left. Voss stepped down and looked me over. Then he opened the carriage door. "No goodbye?" he asked, glancing toward my father. "We said our farewells last night," my father replied. Another lie. He hadn't spoken a single word to me after I left the hall. Voss's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see." He turned to me. "Miss Perez, if you're ready." I walked toward the carriage without looking behind me. There was nothing there I wanted to mourn. The interior was more luxurious than anywhere I had ever been. Velvet covered the seats. The wooden panels gleamed with polish. Small crystal lamps somehow remained steady despite the movement of the carriage. I sat in the corner and watched my childhood home disappear through the window. "You may cry if you need to," Voss said quietly. "Most candidates do during this journey." "I'm not most candidates." "No." He opened his familiar ledger. "I don't imagine you are." We traveled nearly an hour in silence before curiosity defeated my determination to remain detached. "You said 347 women tried." "Yes." "What makes the king believe number 348 will be different?" Voss's pen stopped. "What makes you believe you will?" "I don't." He glanced up. "But you still came to collect me, so either the king is desperate, Or someone believes desperation might be the missing qualification. The corner of Voss's mouth moved. Not quite a smile. You're observant. So which is it? The king's advisors believe the curse may require someone with nothing to lose. Someone who won't perform or posture merely to gain royal favor. Someone expendable. Someone authentic, Voss corrected gently. There is a difference. I turned back toward the window. The countryside slowly transformed. Farmland gave way to forests. Forests gave way to roads crowded with travelers. Then the capital appeared, spreading across the horizon in gleaming stone. Packhouses rose along the streets with carved facades. Warriors trained in open yards, shifting between skin and fur. Markets overflowed with merchants selling fresh meat, cloth, jewelry, herbs, and silver-etched weapons. Above everything stood the palace. It dominated the skyline like a crown made of stone and steel. White marble walls seemed to shine beneath the sun. Towers climbed into the clouds. Gardens spread across the hills like emerald jewels. Flags carrying the royal crest, a wolf's head surrounded by silver thorns, snapped in the wind. It looks like a fairy tale, I whispered. Most prisons do from outside. I turned sharply toward Voss. He was watching the palace with an expression I couldn't identify. Sympathy, perhaps. Or regret. Is that what it is? A prison for the king? Yes. And for me? Voss closed his ledger. That depends entirely upon what you choose to see. The carriage passed through the palace gates. We moved beyond guards wearing ceremonial armor, manicured lawns filled with nobles, and fountains throwing water high into the air. Everything announced wealth, power, control, but I noticed what grandeur tried to hide. Servants kept their eyes lowered. Guards never moved their hands far from their weapons. The beauty didn't make the palace feel free. It made it feel carefully contained. We didn't stop at the grand entrance. Instead, the carriage circled toward a side courtyard. Voss helped me down and led me through a narrow stone doorway. This is the service wing, he explained. Why are we here? You'll be prepared before meeting His Majesty. Prepared how? He didn't answer. He opened another door. Inside was not the dungeon I'd half expected, but an enormous bathing chamber. A copper tub stood in the middle, already filled with steaming water scented with lavender and another unfamiliar herb. Clean clothes rested on a bench. 2 female servants waited beside them. Miss Perez requires bathing and dressing, Voss said. Then, more firmly, treat her with respect. She is a candidate, not a prisoner. Both servants nodded. The distinction seemed important to him. When you're ready, they will escort you to the king's wing. He started to leave, then stopped. Miss Perez. Yes? The question I mentioned yesterday. Why have you come? I waited. Think carefully before answering. The king values honesty above almost everything. Then Voss disappeared through the door. The 2 women stared at me with expressions caught somewhere between pity and fear. The older servant spoke first. If you'll remove your dress, miss. Her gray hair was pulled tightly into a bun, but her eyes were gentle. My name is Helena. This is Mara. We're here to help you. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to preserve whatever dignity and privacy still belonged to me. But I was exhausted from protecting scraps of myself, and the steaming water looked too inviting to resist. I undressed. I could feel their eyes move over my thin body, my scarred hands, the marks of years spent working for a family that never considered me one of them. I lowered myself into the water. Heat stung my skin before soothing it. Something inside my chest loosened. Helena washed my hair with practiced gentleness while Mara scrubbed my hands, trying to remove dirt that seemed permanently embedded in the calluses. You're very brave, Mara whispered. I'm very desperate. She paused. Is there much difference? Helena continued working sweet-smelling oil through my hair. We prepared every candidate who came before you in this room. All 347? Yes. What were they like? Most arrived with ambition in their eyes. Some came for power, some wanted the crown. A few genuinely hoped to help the king. Helena studied me, but none looked the way you do. How do I look? Like you've already accepted whatever happens. I didn't know whether that was courage or simply exhaustion. What happened to the others after they failed? Helena and Mira exchanged a glance. They left changed, Helena said carefully. How? The king shows them something, or asks something of them. We don't know exactly. Whatever happens inside his chambers destroys some certainty they had about themselves. He hurts them? Not physically. Helena's expression softened. But there are wounds other than physical ones. I thought about my father, about Lydia's relief, about a lifetime of being treated as though my existence were an inconvenience. Yes, I said quietly, there are. They finished in silence. Afterward, they dried me with towels softer than anything I'd ever touched. The clothes waiting for me were simple but beautiful. A white linen shift fell to my ankles beneath a dark blue overdress embroidered with silver along the cuffs and hem. There was no corset, nothing designed to reshape me into someone more attractive or impressive. Mara combed my damp hair and left it loose down my back. No jewelry? I asked. In every portrait I'd ever seen of royal women, they wore enough gemstones to buy entire villages. The king dislikes adornment during the challenge, Helena said. Why? He wants to meet each candidate as she is. Nothing more, nothing less. They led me deeper into the palace. Polished marble and historical tapestries still covered the walls, but the farther we traveled, the heavier the atmosphere became. Servants stopped working to stare. Some made protective gestures as I passed. Others looked away, as if simply acknowledging me might invite the curse into their own lives. Eventually, the ornate marble disappeared. Dark stone replaced it. The corridor narrowed. At the far end stood a massive black door, nearly twice the height of an ordinary one, reinforced with silver patterns shaped into thorns, roses, wolves, and moons. Beauty and violence carved into the same surface. Helena stopped. This is where we leave you. I stared at the door. The king's chambers? She nodded. No one enters without his permission. What do I do? Knock 3 times. Wait. When the door opens, enter alone. There is a receiving room first. His personal chambers lie beyond it. And then? Mara swallowed. Then you face the challenge. She placed something cold into my palm. A small silver token stamped with the royal crest. If you become frightened, show this to any guard. They will escort you from the palace immediately. No questions, no punishment. I stared at the token. An escape route. A promise of safety. I almost laughed. They thought I might run from a monster when I had spent my whole life surrounded by monsters who wore human faces. Thank you, I said. I closed my fingers around the token. For being kind. The women nodded and walked away. Their footsteps faded until I stood completely alone. I placed my hand against the black wood. It was warm, almost alive. Something waited on the other side. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel its presence. Power, weight, something barely restrained. 347 women had stood where I stood now. 347 had knocked. 347 had entered. And all of them had failed. I remembered Voss's question. Why have you come? Not for love. I didn't believe in fairy tale romance. Not for power. I had no desire to become queen. Not for glory. Glory belonged to people who had spent their lives believing they mattered. So why was I here? Because my father considered me expendable? Because I had nothing left to lose? No, there was something more. I raised my hand, knocked 3 times. The sound echoed through the corridor like a heartbeat. The door opened. I stepped into the darkness. Because remaining where I had been meant dying slowly. Moving forward might mean dying quickly. But at least that would be a choice I had made myself. The receiving room beyond the door stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Capitol and the distant gardens. Books covered one entire wall. A fireplace burned near several elegant chairs. Maps and papers covered a large desk. Standing near the windows with his back to me was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly motionless. He looked either completely controlled or completely exhausted. "Close the door." His voice surprised me. It was deep and rough around the edges, not the polished voice I imagined a king should possess. I closed it. The lock clicked. The sound felt final. He turned, and I understood why so many women had walked into this room believing they could love him. The Alpha King was beautiful, in the way dangerous things were beautiful. Dark hair, dark eyes, sharp features, power held beneath every movement. But what caught me wasn't his appearance. It was his exhaustion, not ordinary tiredness. Something deeper, something carved into the soul. He looked at me the way I sometimes looked at myself in mirrors, as though searching for something that used to exist inside him and no longer remembering what it was. Name? Camila Perez. Pack? None. His expression shifted slightly. I was disowned. Why? I don't have a wolf. He approached. Every step was deliberate. I forced myself not to move backward, not to lower my gaze. Fear existed inside me, but strangely, it felt distant. He stopped several feet away. 347 women have stood where you're standing. I know. They were stronger than you, more powerful, more complete. I said nothing. They all failed. His eyes searched mine. Why do you believe you'll be different? It was obviously another test. I was simply too tired to perform for him. I don't. His eyes narrowed. I honestly expect to fail exactly as they did. That seemed to surprise him. But unlike them, one more failure won't change much for me. I've spent my entire life being told I'm a failure. At least this one will be familiar. He studied me. Voss told you I would ask why you've come. Yes. Then answer. His voice hardened. Why have you come, Camila Perez? I could have offered something noble, duty, hope, destiny. Instead, I told him the truth. Because my father sold me to clear his debts. The king didn't move. Because he considers me expendable. Silence. Because staying in that house meant dying slowly. Coming here might mean dying quickly. I held his gaze. At least it's a different death. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the Alpha King laughed. Not cruelly, not mockingly. It sounded like recognition, like a man hearing his own private truth spoken through someone else's mouth. Finally, some of the exhaustion lifted from his face. Finally, someone honest. He walked to his desk and picked up a sheet of paper. The challenge is simple. He held it toward me. Answer my riddle before dawn. If you solve it, the curse breaks. You become queen. Your family's debt remains forgiven, and everything the crown can offer becomes yours. And if I fail? His expression went still. You leave unharmed, unchanged, just like those before you. I took the paper. Written across it in elegant script were 4 lines. I am given freely but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking and kept by silence. I bind without chains and free without keys. What am I? I read the words again. Then again. You have until dawn, the king said. You may remain anywhere inside these chambers. Ask me anything. I will answer honestly. He paused. I'll even show you what I am. Something in his jaw tightened. All 3 forms. I looked up. Why? Because the curse can only be broken by someone who sees all of me and chooses to stay anyway. And if I solve the riddle? You give me your answer. And then? We discover whether the curse agrees. I looked toward the door. What if I use the token now and leave? A sad smile touched his face. Then you'll be smarter than 347 other women. He lowered himself into a chair near the fire like a man surrendering to gravity. But Voss tells me you didn't come here for intelligent reasons. No. I looked at the riddle in my hand. I came for desperate ones. Desperation and honesty. The king leaned back and watched me through exhausted eyes. Perhaps those are exactly what I've been missing. I stood there with the riddle in my hand, the silver token in my pocket, and a cursed king waiting for me to decide. I'll stay. His gaze sharpened, not because I thought I could solve the riddle, not because I expected a crown, not because I believed in fairy tale endings. I stayed because for the first time in my life, someone had looked at me without measuring what I could give him. For the first time, someone had simply looked at me. And even if it lasted only until dawn, that was enough. Chapter 3. The Beast's Question. The king remained in his chair, silently watching me while I stood in the middle of the receiving room, feeling like a chess piece waiting for someone to decide where I belonged. Eventually, he frowned. Aren't you going to sit? I looked toward the other chairs. They were elegant and expensive. Furniture made for people who belonged in royal rooms. Am I allowed? His expression tightened. Allowed? I'm asking. You are a candidate for queen, not a servant. Sit wherever you're comfortable. I chose the chair farthest from him, not because I feared him. At least not entirely. It was habit. A lifetime of learning to occupy as little space as possible. To exist without inconveniencing anyone. The king noticed. 347 women. What about them? You are the first who asked permission to sit in her own receiving room. This isn't my receiving room. During the challenge, it is. He gestured around us. These chambers belong to you until dawn, or until you choose to leave. Everything here is provided for your comfort. I looked again, really looked. The fire was already burning despite the mild weather. The desk had been positioned to catch the best daylight. Beside my chair sat a glass of water and a small plate with warm bread and cheese. You feed every candidate? I offer food. Most are too nervous to eat. He looked at me. You should. Why? You're thin enough for a strong wind to carry away. It should have felt insulting, but there was no contempt in his voice. He was merely stating what he saw. I picked up the bread. It was warm. The cheese was soft and seasoned with herbs, richer than anything I normally ate. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The king rose abruptly and crossed to the windows. His shoulders were rigid. His hands clasped behind his back so tightly that control seemed to radiate from him. You need to understand what you're facing before you commit to staying. I already committed. You committed without knowing what I am. He turned. The openness from moments earlier disappeared behind something harder. The curse didn't simply give me 3 physical forms, Camila. It fractured me. I set down the bread. The man you see now is the king, the ruler, the part that makes decisions and maintains control. And the other 2? The wolf. He exhaled slowly. And something between wolf and man. The wolf is dangerous? The wolf is instinct. He doesn't reason the way we do. He doesn't speak, he feels. And the third? The king's fingers curled into fists. The beast. The word changed the air. What is he? Everything the man suppresses, and everything the wolf cannot express. Rage, grief, hunger, pain, all of it forced together into something that should never have existed. And I have to meet him. If you intend to complete the challenge. He stepped closer. Whoever breaks this curse must accept all of me, not only the parts that are convenient, civilized, or safe. Most women met the man? Yes. The wolf? Some could tolerate him. But the beast. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. That's what breaks them, I said. Yes. I should have reached for the silver token. Instead, I asked, what does he do? The king gave a bitter laugh. He asks questions. That doesn't sound terrifying. He asks questions people spend their entire lives avoiding. His gaze turned distant. The beast sees through performance. He finds every comfortable lie a person has built around herself, then refuses to let her hide behind it. He doesn't physically hurt them? No. Then why do they leave broken? Because physical wounds can heal. His voice dropped. But when someone strips away every illusion you've used to survive and forces you to admit what remains underneath, healing becomes more complicated. Some women leave hating him. He looked at me. Others leave hating themselves. I thought about my father calling me expendable, about Lydia's relief when I volunteered, about years of being told I was defective. I don't have many illusions left. The king moved closer. I know exactly what I am. Do you? He stopped directly in front of me. I had to tilt my head to hold his gaze. The beast will test that certainty. He will keep digging until he finds something you have never admitted. Shame, grief, hope, desire. Whatever you've hidden deepest. Then I'll face it. Why? The question came almost sharply. Why would you willingly subject yourself to that? You don't know me. You owe me nothing. Your family's debt is already forgiven. You could leave now. His voice roughened. So why are you still here? This was different from his first question. Not why had I come. Why was I staying? And suddenly I understood something. He didn't actually want me to succeed. Not because he enjoyed watching women fail. Because he was exhausted by hope. Exhausted by waiting for women to claim they could accept him, only to run. Exhausted by being feared. Exhausted by being disappointed. I'm staying because I've spent my whole life watching people decide I'm not worth effort. His expression changed slightly. Not worth patience. Not worth kindness. Sometimes not even worth basic respect. I swallowed. And once, just once, I want to know what it feels like to be someone's choice. Something in his face cracked. Only for a second. You believe I'll choose you? No. I almost smiled. But I might choose you. He went very still. And I've never been allowed to choose much of anything before. The silence between us filled with things neither of us knew how to say. Eventually, the king stepped back. The transformation is unpleasant to witness. I'll stay. Most women leave the room when it begins. I'll stay. The beast will say things that cut deeper than claws. I'll stay. And if dawn comes and the riddle remains unsolved, I'll stay until dawn. I held the paper tighter. That's the challenge. I don't run. I try to solve the riddle. Whatever happens between now and then happens. He watched me for a long time. Then nodded. One more warning. What? The beast asks every candidate the same question. My heartbeat quickened. What question? I can't tell you. Convenient. It would destroy the purpose of asking. His mouth almost curved. But I can offer advice. I waited. Don't answer what you believe he wants to hear. Don't answer with what makes you appear brave, noble, selfless, or strong. He met my eyes. Answer what is true, even if the truth makes you look weak, or selfish, or broken, because he values honesty, because he values authenticity. He turned toward a door partially hidden behind a tapestry. There is a difference. He placed his hand on the handle. The bedroom is through here. Transformations consume enormous energy. I'll need to rest after each one. He glanced over his shoulder. You may remain in this room. I'll come. His hand froze. You don't know what you're agreeing to. Then show me. The bedroom was simpler than I'd imagined. A large bed covered in dark fabric, more bookshelves. Another fireplace. Windows overlooking the Capitol as evening lights began appearing below. It felt less like a royal bedchamber and more like somewhere a man went to hide. The king stopped in the center and removed his shirt. I looked away immediately. Heat rushed into my face. You should watch. I forced myself to look back. He wasn't teasing. The first transformation is difficult to witness. Better that you see it while I can prepare you. Then I noticed the scars. Dozens crossed his chest and abdomen. Burns. Claw marks. Dark traces that resembled old silver poisoning. From before the curse? After. He touched a deep scar above his ribs. Every transformation damages the body. The beast is too large for human skin. The wolf is too wild for human restraint. And the man? The man tries to hold everything together. His fingers lingered over the scar. And fails. I suddenly understood his exhaustion. That's why you look like you're barely sleeping. Yes. My stomach tightened. That's why you're dying. He said nothing, then nodded. The curse is killing me slowly. His voice was frighteningly calm. A few years, if I'm fortunate. I stared at him. So breaking the curse isn't about finding love. Not anymore. His eyes met mine. It's survival. What about the women before me? Did they know? No. Why not? I told them the fairy tale version. Break the curse, find true love, become queen. Why hide the rest? Because telling a stranger she's being interviewed to save a dying man tends to make her run faster. But you're telling me. He looked at me for a long moment. Because you know what being treated as expendable feels like. His voice softened. I will not lie to you the way everyone else has. Then his body trembled. His eyes closed. The wolf comes first. I stepped backward instinctively. He's easier than the beast. More straightforward. His breathing changed. Are you ready? No. That was the truth. Not remotely. I stayed anyway. His transformation was nothing like the graceful shifting I'd seen other werewolves perform. It was brutal. His muscles seized. Bones snapped and reformed beneath his skin. His body twisted violently, as though something inside him were trying to tear its way free. He dropped to his hands and knees. His spine arched. Every instinct told me to turn away, to give him privacy, to run. But I had promised to stay, so I watched. The wolf that finally emerged was enormous, easily twice the size of an ordinary wolf. His fur was black enough to swallow the firelight, but his eyes were unchanged. Dark. Exhausted. Watching me. He approached slowly. I didn't move. He lowered his head and sniffed my hand. His nose pressed cold against my palm. Then he sat. Just sat in front of me like an enormous dog waiting for permission. Hello, I whispered. His tail moved. Not exactly a wag, but close enough. I slowly touched the top of his head. His fur was unexpectedly soft and warm. The wolf leaned into my hand. A quiet breath escaped him. You aren't nearly as frightening as advertised. He huffed. Is that disagreement? Another huff. Fine, I'll assume you're offended. We stayed that way for several minutes. Me touching the impossible wolf. Him accepting affection as though he had been starving for it. Then he began trembling again. I drew my hand away. The second transformation was worse. The wolf's body expanded and twisted into something nature could never have intended. Too large. Too angular. Both human and animal, yet fully neither. The beast rose upright. Dark fur covered his enormous frame. Claws extended from hands shaped almost like a man's. His face was elongated somewhere between human and wolf. His teeth were too sharp. His eyes too intelligent. His presence overwhelming. Every survival instinct inside me screamed. Run. I remained seated. The beast began circling. Slowly. Predatory. Assessing. Then he spoke. His growl somehow formed words. Why are you here, little Omega? My breath stopped. The question. I could still lie. I could talk about duty, about breaking curses, about saving the kingdom, about love. I could offer every pretty answer those 347 women had probably used. Instead, I looked into the beast's eyes. Because I wanted to matter. He stopped. I forced the rest out. Just once. The beast watched me. Even if I only matter for one night, even if I fail, I wanted someone to look at me and see something worth staying for. He came closer until his muzzle was inches from my face. And if I told you that you already matter? His voice vibrated through my bones. That your worth does not depend upon someone else recognizing it? Tears burned behind my eyes. Then I'd say you're the first person who's ever told me that. My voice broke. And even if it's a lie, it's the kindest lie anyone has ever given me. One clawed hand lifted. Every muscle in my body tensed. But instead of hurting me, the beast touched my cheek with impossible gentleness. Not a lie. His voice softened. Truth. You matter because you exist. Not because you are useful. Not because you are whole. Not because you are powerful. His thumb brushed beneath my eye. Simply because you are. The first tear fell. Then another. And once I started, I couldn't stop. I cried for the years of silence. For my mother. For the wolf I'd never had. For the father who saw only failure. For the little girl who had learned to disappear because being noticed only brought pain. And the beast, the creature that supposedly shattered women, pulled me against his chest. He held me. He did not tell me to stop. He did not call me weak. He simply stayed while I cried for the first time in years. Chapter 4. I woke to silence and pale morning light coming through unfamiliar windows. For several confused seconds, I couldn't remember where I was. Then everything returned. The palace. The challenge. The king. The wolf. The beast holding me until exhaustion dragged me into sleep. I sat upright. The Alpha King was human again. He sat fully dressed in a chair by the fireplace, watching me with an unreadable expression. You stayed. I said I would. People say many things they don't mean. He rose and poured water into a glass. Most women wake after meeting the beast and immediately ask for their token. He handed me the water. You slept. My throat was dry. What time is it? Just after dawn. I froze. The challenge is over? Yes. His gaze shifted toward the paper still resting on the small table. You didn't solve the riddle. The words stared back at me. Given freely but cannot be taken. Broken by speaking and kept by silence. No, I admitted. I didn't. Then you're free to leave. The careful neutrality in his voice made me look at him. Your family's debt is forgiven. You completed your obligation. His face had returned to perfect control. But his eyes betrayed him. Resignation lived there. He had expected me to fail. Worse, he had expected me to leave. What if I don't want to? His composure cracked. What? What if I don't want to leave? The challenge ended at dawn. Exactly. Dawn has passed and I still haven't solved the riddle. I stood. What if I want to continue? That's not how this works. Who made the rules? His brow furrowed. I did. Then change them. He stared at me. I crossed my arms, surprised by my own confidence. You told me I could stay until dawn, or until I left. I haven't left. Camila. So what happens now? He looked genuinely bewildered. 347 women couldn't wait to escape these rooms. Why would you voluntarily remain? Because I'm curious. The answer surprised even me. But it was true. Somewhere between meeting an exhausted king and falling asleep in a beast's arms, curiosity had returned to me. I had spent years surviving. Survival didn't leave much space for wonder. Now I wanted answers. I want to understand the curse. I want to understand the riddle. And I want to understand you. Curiosity is dangerous. So is hopelessness. I gave him a faint smile. I've lived with that my entire life. I'll take dangerous curiosity over safe despair. Something shifted in his face. Hope, perhaps. Or fear. If you stay now, you're staying voluntarily. Yes. Not for the challenge. Yes. Not because of your father's debt. I understand. There will be conditions. He approached. The scent of pine and smoke clung to him, with something wild underneath. I won't imprison you. You may leave whenever you choose. Good. But if you remain inside these chambers with me. He paused. All three of me. Why only here? Because the man can control himself in public. The wolf and beast cannot. Transformations need privacy. Safe for whom? Both of us. I considered what I was agreeing to. Isolation. Days inside rooms with a cursed king I'd only met yesterday. Unpredictable transformations. Very little resembling an ordinary life. I'll stay. He exhaled, as though he'd been holding his breath. Then his eyes narrowed. Why? You've already asked that. Not the same question. He came closer. Don't tell me you want to matter. Don't tell me you want to be chosen. Tell me why you're really staying. I thought about the night. About his honesty. About the beast's arms around me. About waking somewhere that should have terrified me and feeling strangely safe. Because you're the first person who's ever been honest with me without using honesty as an excuse for cruelty. He went still. You told me you're dying. You showed me the beast instead of hiding him. You warned me to leave instead of manipulating me into staying. I met his eyes. And when I cried, you didn't call me dramatic. You didn't tell me I was weak. You just held me. My voice softened. I've never had that. Camila. Strength without dominance. Honesty without cruelty. I shook my head. Even if I never solve the riddle, even if this curse never breaks, I want to understand whatever this is. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he walked to the tapestry and opened the hidden door farther than he had the night before. Come. Where? I want to show you something. I followed him through a short corridor, then stopped in the next doorway. A library, not merely shelves of books. An entire room built around them. Floor-to-ceiling shelves covered every wall. Thousands of volumes filled them. Ancient leather-bound texts, new publications, journals, poetry, histories. Comfortable chairs sat beside lamps and small tables. Sunlight poured through broad windows. A large desk stood in the center covered with papers, maps, and notebooks. This is... Words failed me. Yours, the king said. I turned. What? If you're staying, you need somewhere for your mind to breathe. He moved past me. The beast told me you love books, that you taught yourself to read, because no one bothered to teach you properly. That stories became somewhere to escape when reality was unbearable. The beast told you? All three forms share memory. He touched the spine of a book. We simply remember differently. How? The man remembers facts, the wolf remembers emotion, and the beast? Truth. A shiver moved through me. What truth did he remember about me? The king removed an old collection of fairy tales from the shelf. That you're desperately lonely. The words struck harder than insults would have. That you built walls from books because the walls around your room could never protect you from hurt. He looked directly at me. And that you stayed last night not because you're fearless, but because monsters felt safer than the people who were supposed to love you. I looked away. The beast sees too much. He sees what people hide. Does he judge it? No. The king placed the book on the desk. He simply acknowledges what is there. I walked slowly among the shelves. Philosophy, science, history, poetry, romance, adventure, plays, encyclopedias, books in languages I couldn't even identify. This collection must have taken years, decades. He lowered himself carefully into a chair. I noticed how much effort the movement required. When the curse first began, I couldn't sleep. Transforming hurt too much. Reading became one of the few ways I could disappear from myself. How long have you been cursed? 5 years. 5 years of pain. 5 years of failed challenges. 5 years alone inside these beautiful rooms. He looked around the library. And in all that time, I never considered what would happen if I found someone who didn't care about breaking the curse. His gaze returned to me, someone who wanted to understand it instead. I selected a book on ancient curses. Can I ask how it started? I promised honesty. I sat opposite him. So tell me. He leaned back. There was a woman, a witch, although she'd probably call herself a sorceress. What did she want? Sanctuary. His expression hardened with memory. Her coven had been destroyed by hunters. She came to me 3 years after I became king. She said the Hunters Guild was pursuing her and asked me to protect her. And you refused. Yes. Why? Because granting sanctuary meant openly opposing the Hunters Guild. It could have destabilized half the kingdom. His hands tightened. It was the correct political decision. But she begged me. His voice lowered. She told me she had nowhere else, that I was her final hope. He stared past me, and I still sent her away. So she cursed you. She showed me what fragmentation feels like, what it means to have parts of yourself fighting each other, what it feels like to be treated as monstrous while still believing you're trying to do good. A bitter smile crossed his face. She said the curse would end only when someone loved all 3 forms equally. The man, wolf, and beast. Yes. Has anyone tried? Some women claim to love me. But love requires knowing someone. He looked at me. I never allowed them enough time. One night? One night. I stared at him. You expect a woman to genuinely love you in less than 12 hours? No. Then the challenge was designed to fail. He looked sharply at me. What? The curse requires vulnerability, being known, being chosen after someone sees everything. I leaned forward. But you only give candidates 1 night. His expression changed. You're protecting yourself. The words seemed to hit him physically. You've created a deadline that guarantees nobody gets close enough to really know you. Silence filled the library. Finally, he exhaled. The beast was right. About what? You see too much. I learned by being invisible. I closed the book. When nobody notices you, you notice everyone. He rose and moved toward the window. What if you're right? I joined him. What if I've sabotaged every chance to break this curse because being alone is safer than being rejected again? Then we're not very different. He glanced at me. I spent years convincing myself I didn't need anyone, because wanting connection meant becoming vulnerable. I looked over the city, and vulnerability gave people something to use against me. Better alone than abandoned. Exactly. His voice softened. And yet you stayed. And yet I stayed. I looked at him. Maybe we're both tired of being safe. Something raw appeared in his eyes. If you truly remain, it gets harder. You've mentioned that. The transformations will continue. The beast will keep asking questions. And the wolf? He hesitated. What about him? The wolf is lonely. That wasn't the answer I expected. He'll want you close. He'll seek touch. He'll sleep near you if you let him. He doesn't understand human boundaries the way I do. That doesn't sound terrible. It is when you're desperately trying not to feel anything. The truth beneath his words became obvious. The man could keep distance. The beast could hide behind intimidation. But the wolf simply wanted connection. If I stayed, all 3 would become attached. And if the curse eventually killed him, we would both suffer more. I'm still staying. Why? The desperation in his voice surprised me. You could leave the palace and begin again. Find another pack. Build a normal life. I don't want normal. The words came without thought. Then I realized how true they were. Normal is what broke me. I gestured around us. My father's indifference was normal. Lydia's pity was normal. A whole pack deciding a wolfless omega wasn't worth knowing was normal. I looked at him. This is strange, difficult, probably doomed. His mouth tightened. But it's real. I stepped closer. You're real with me. I'd rather have strange and real than normal and empty. Slowly, giving me plenty of time to move away, he lifted a hand and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my cheek. I don't deserve you. Good thing I'm not here because you deserve me. He blinked. I'm here because I choose to be. Something in his careful expression finally broke open. The riddle, he said softly. Do you still want to solve it? I glanced toward the bedroom where the paper remained. Given freely, but cannot be taken. Yes. I want to keep trying. For the curse? No. That surprised him. I want to understand what you're actually asking. A real smile appeared on his face. Not bitter. Not exhausted. Real. 347 women came through those doors. He shook his head. You're the first one who's made me want to hope again. Hope is dangerous. So is curiosity. We're in trouble. Probably. I turned toward the shelves again. Since I'm staying, what should I call you? What do you mean? Alpha King sounds excessively formal for someone I've already cried all over. A quiet laugh came from behind me. Sane? I looked back. My name is Jane. Jane. I tested it. The name felt strangely intimate. Dangerous. Right. I plan to spend today reading every book you own about curses, riddles, and impossible magical agreements. He followed me. And I'm going to spend today pretending I'm not watching you every few minutes like some kind of stalker. I laughed. An actual laugh. The sound felt like opening a window in a room that had been sealed for years. You can watch. His eyebrows rose. I don't mind. Dangerous words, Camila. I thought we'd established that I'm comfortable with danger. For the first time since entering the palace, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Small. Fragile. Probably temporary. But real. I selected a book about magical contracts, curled into one of the chairs, and began reading. Jane sat opposite me with a royal report in his hands. Every few minutes, I caught him looking over the page at me. I didn't mind. Not at all. Chapter 5. The Wolf's Devotion. Time behaved strangely inside Jane's chambers. I'd been there 3 days. Or 4. Perhaps 5. Eventually, counting became difficult. Outside the windows, day followed night as usual, but inside the rooms, every hour felt stretched. Jane told me the distortion was another part of the curse. What felt like a week to us might equal only 2 days beyond the chamber walls. Why would the witch do that? I'd asked on what I believed was my 6th morning. So the loneliness lasted longer. His answer had been quiet. She wanted me to understand isolation, to understand how slowly time moves when someone is trapped with no one but himself. Except he wasn't alone anymore. Neither was I. We slowly developed a routine. Mornings belonged to books and responsibilities. I read in the library while Jane worked at his desk. Voss delivered royal correspondence through a narrow, secured opening in the outer door so the king could govern without leaving. Afternoons belonged to conversation. Sometimes we debated the nature of curses, power, responsibility, and choice. Sometimes we argued over more serious matters, like whether poetry was superior to prose. Evenings belonged to transformations. The wolf always came first. He was gentle, quiet, hungry for affection in a way that made my chest ache. Soon I understood his smallest movements, the angle of his ears when curious, the slow sweep of his tail when content, the soft whine he used when he wanted me to follow him. He often rested his head across my lap while I read. The beast came later, and the beast always had questions. What are you most afraid of, little Omega? Being forgotten. What do you want that you refuse to ask for? To be someone's priority. He tilted his enormous head. Not their duty? No. Not their burden? No. Their choice? Yes. Another evening, the beast asked, if you could change one thing about yourself, what would you change? The answer seemed obvious. My wolf. I would give myself the thing everyone believed I lacked. But sitting there beneath those intelligent eyes, I discovered the answer was no longer true. Nothing, the beast stilled. Nothing? If I changed something, I wouldn't be the person sitting here with you. My voice softened. And I think I'm beginning to like who I'm becoming. A sound rumbled through his chest, somewhere between a growl and a purr. Then he pulled me against him. Truth. His voice vibrated beside my ear. Finally seeing truth. By what I thought was my 10th day, I sat in the library reading another ancient book on curse magic while Jane slept in the chair opposite me. He'd barely rested the previous night. The transformations were worsening. New scars appeared almost daily. Each shift seemed harder for his body to survive. He was dying. Not someday. Not abstractly. I could see it happening in front of me. My chest tightened. You're staring. Jane's eyes remained closed. You're dying. His eyes opened. I told you that the first night. I know. I shut the book. But hearing it and watching it are different. He said nothing. How long? Honestly? Yes. The healers don't know. He pushed himself upright and winced. A year, perhaps. Less if the transformations continue accelerating. And if the curse breaks? Supposedly I'll become whole again, one self, the man, wolf, and beast integrated instead of fighting for control of one body. But 347 women failed. Exactly. His mouth curved without humor. I'm not expecting number 348 to perform a miracle. I'm not trying to break it. So you keep saying. I'm trying to understand it. Is there really a difference? Maybe. I put the book aside and moved to the floor beside his chair. Sitting near him had become natural, as though simply being close might somehow slow the damage. Tell me about the riddle. I've told you the words. Not the words, the meaning. His hand dropped to my hair. His fingers threaded through it absently. Neither of us commented on gestures like that anymore. The riddle concerns what holds people together after everything else fails. I waited. Something that cannot be forced, cannot be taken, cannot be bought. The thing that binds without chains and frees without keys. Yes. I repeated the lines I'd memorized. Given freely but cannot be taken, broken by speaking and kept by silence. A secret? Close. But secrets can be stolen or discovered. Exactly. Trust? Part of it. I looked up at him. But trust is usually earned. This must be given before it is earned. His fingers stilled, which is why it is dangerous. You're still not telling me. I can't. The magic requires you to reach the answer yourself. He looked toward the library shelves. I can tell you where the others went wrong. Where? They focused on the first line, given freely but cannot be taken. They guessed gifts, sacrifice, submission, loyalty. But the important part is the second line, broken by speaking and kept by silence. I frowned. What grows stronger when it stays unspoken? He asked the question softly. What becomes more powerful the longer it exists without being voiced? I thought about everything I had kept silent. Rage. Grief. Longing. But those things didn't bind people. Often they destroyed them. I don't know. You will. The beast thinks so? He believes you're close. And what does the man believe? Jane became quiet. Finally he answered. The man believes he's becoming too attached to someone who will eventually leave. My breath caught. I'm not leaving. You should. Why? Because the longer you stay, the worse it will hurt when I die. I turned and knelt beside his chair. Do you seriously think leaving now makes that easier? He looked away. Do you believe I could walk out of these chambers and forget you? Forget these conversations? Forget the wolf sleeping with his head on my lap? You barely know me. I know all 3 versions of you have shown me more kindness than anyone I've known. He stared at me. I know you gave me a library because you understood I needed somewhere beautiful to escape. I know you're dying, and somehow you're still more worried about me being hurt than yourself. I took his hand between mine. How much more am I required to know before I'm permitted to care? Camila, tell me your deepest shame. He stopped. You want me to know you? I tightened my grip on his hand. Then tell me what you've never told anyone. The truth the man hides, the wolf feels, and the beast knows. For a long moment, he fought himself. Then he whispered, I'm relieved. About what? The curse. His voice became almost inaudible. About dying. I didn't move. If I die, I don't have to keep being perfect. His eyes lowered. I don't have to hold an entire kingdom together. I don't have to make decisions where someone suffers regardless of what I choose. I don't have to pretend I'm strong enough to carry everyone's expectations. His jaw tightened. The curse is killing me. He looked at me. And part of me is grateful. I felt my heart break for him. Because at least it's an ending I didn't choose. At least eventually I can stop. The confession remained between us. Raw, unpleasant. Honest. Thank you. He frowned. For what? Trusting me enough to tell me. His expression was almost confused. For being honest even when honesty makes you look less heroic. I squeezed his hand. You want my deepest shame? You don't owe me one. I know. I inhaled. I'm barren. The word was sharp when it left my mouth. Jane didn't speak. The pack healers examined me when I turned 18 because they were trying to understand why I hadn't shifted. I forced myself onward. They discovered my womb is malformed. I can't have children. His face changed. Not pity. Understanding. I can't continue a bloodline. I can't fulfill the one biological purpose everyone says an omega female should fulfill. That's why your father called you expendable. I laughed without humor. That's why everyone did. The words hurt more now that someone was actually listening. A wolf who can't shift is useless. A woman who can't bear children is worthless. Put them together and you get me. Camila. My mother died giving birth to me. I had never said this part aloud. And I can't even honor her death by continuing her bloodline. My throat tightened. I killed her, and then I ruined the only thing that might have made her sacrifice worthwhile. You did not kill her. I understand that logically. I looked away. Logic doesn't change what guilt feels like. Jane moved from the chair and knelt on the floor beside me. Both hands came to my face. Listen. His voice turned firm. Your worth is not determined by whether you can bear children. Tears filled my eyes. Or whether you can shift. I tried to look away. He wouldn't let me. You are not a vessel for somebody else's legacy. His thumbs rested against my cheeks. You are Camila, brilliant, brave, stubborn, infuriatingly perceptive Camila, who sees through every mask I wear and refuses to run when every sensible instinct tells her she should. You're saying that because I mean it. His voice cut through mine. The beast knew from the first night. He sensed that you were carrying shame that never belonged to you. My vision blurred. He's been pushing me for days to tell you that you are enough exactly as you are. I don't know how to believe that. Then let me believe it for both of us. He pulled me into his arms. Until you can. His heart beat beneath my cheek. Strong for now. Steady for now. I can't give you a wolf, he whispered. I can't repair your body or erase your past. His hand moved through my hair. But I can give you this truth. I closed my eyes. You matter to me. My breath hitched. All three of me. He held me tighter. The man values your mind. The wolf craves your presence. The beast sees your soul. His voice lowered. None of them care what you can produce. None of them care what you can provide. I cried into his shirt. They care because you're you. For once, being broken didn't feel like failure. It simply felt human. When my tears stopped, I pulled back. Jane's eyes were wet too, although he hadn't cried. We're quite a pair. My voice was rough. The dying king and the Baron Omega. He smiled faintly. Sounds like a fairy tale. Or a tragedy. Possibly both. His thumb brushed away a tear. Camilla, there's something else. What? The transformations are getting worse. I already knew. More frequent. The wolf may begin appearing during daylight. The beast could emerge without warning. I'll be here. He shook his head. You say that as though it's easy. It isn't easy. I looked directly at him. But it's simple. What is? I choose you. His breath stopped. I'll keep choosing you until you order me away or I physically cannot stay. Something inside his expression finally collapsed. Every wall he had left. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You didn't do anything. He frowned. That's the point. My hand tightened around his. You don't earn this. The riddle flashed through my mind without meaning becoming clear. I'm giving it because I want to. Jane slowly leaned closer. He gave me every opportunity to retreat. I didn't. His forehead touched mine. If I kiss you, this stops being about curses. His breath warmed my lips. It becomes real. It already is. It becomes something that will hurt when it ends. I know. And you're still willing? I put my hand over his heart. Jane, I've been willing since the beast held me while I cried. I smiled faintly. Maybe before that. His eyes closed. So if you want to kiss me, kiss me. He did. Softly at first. Almost cautiously. As though I might disappear if he held too tightly. I kissed him back with every certainty I possessed. One hand moved into my hair. The other drew me closer. It wasn't like the romance stories I'd read. No explosion of magic. No stars falling. No sudden revelation that everything would be perfect. Just two damaged people choosing one another in the tiny space between heartbeats. Knowing choice might not be enough. Choosing anyway. When we separated, both of us were breathing harder. That was, Jane began. A terrible idea. Yes. Completely irresponsible. Absolutely. I smiled. Want to do it again? Desperately. The second kiss carried less hesitation. More hunger. The hunger of loneliness finally being fed. Of touch finally being allowed. His hands moved along my back, my arms, my sides as though memorizing me. And for once, I let myself be wanted. When his body began trembling, I didn't pull away. I held him through the transformation. The wolf emerged, dark fur and gentle eyes replacing the man. Then he immediately shoved his enormous head beneath my hand. I laughed. You're shameless, he huffed. I'm taking that as agreement. He dropped beside me, warm against my leg. Later, when the wolf transformed into the beast, I didn't flinch either. I looked up. I think I'm falling in love with you. The beast became perfectly still. All three of you. My heartbeat hammered. Is that allowed? A clawed hand cupped my face with impossible gentleness. Allowed, little Omega. His growl softened. It is the possibility that has kept me sane for 5 years. I swallowed. The possibility that someone might someday choose this. His eyes burned into mine. Might choose us despite everything. Then consider yourself chosen. He dragged me against his chest. His whole body shuddered. I couldn't tell whether it was relief, grief, or hope painful enough to resemble both. The riddle, he rumbled into my hair. What about it? You're close. I still don't know the answer. You can feel it. He was right. Something waited just beyond my understanding. Given freely. Broken by speaking. Kept by silence. Binding without chains. Freeing without keys. Give me time. We don't have much. Then we'll use what we have. The beast held me until he transformed back. Later, Jane brought me into the bed. Nothing more. He wrapped one arm around my waist. His chest rested against my back. His breathing warmed my neck. I listened to his heartbeat while sleep pulled me toward darkness. and I repeated the riddle. What am I? The answer hovered just beyond reach. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow I'll understand. I had no idea what tomorrow was about to take from us. Chapter 6. The Truth Behind the Curse. I woke to voices, not Jane's. Several people were speaking in the receiving room. I sat up, careful not to disturb him. His arm tightened automatically around my waist. Stay, he murmured, barely awake. Someone's outside. His eyes opened instantly. Then realization crossed his face, followed by dread. What day is it? I don't know. I rubbed sleep from my eyes. Tuesday? Wednesday? Time stopped making sense days ago. It has been 2 weeks since you entered these rooms. I stared at him. 2 weeks? In here. He sat up. Outside, only 5 days have passed. He ran both hands through his hair. And today the council meets. The council? Jane was already leaving the bed. I'm cursed, but I'm also still the king. He moved toward the wardrobe. I have responsibilities, decisions, meetings that can't stop simply because my body is falling apart. He pulled out a formal dark blue jacket embroidered with silver. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. What aren't you telling me? His hands froze around the jacket. He stood with his back toward me. You've been thinking of the man and the king as different people. What? He turned, and I watched a mask settle over the face I'd come to know. The exhausted, vulnerable Jane disappeared beneath royal control. The curse doesn't create 3 separate beings, Camila. My heart began beating faster. It fractures one being into 3 forms. I know that. Not completely. His voice became careful. The man you've talked with, slept beside, kissed. He swallowed. That's the king. I stared. I'm always the king. Something cold moved through me. I allowed you to think there was a difference because it was easier. You lied. I withheld details. Don't. My anger came instantly. Do not hide behind words after everything we've shared. His control cracked. What we shared was real. Then why hide anything? Because I never gave you the complete truth about what breaking the curse requires. I went still. Tell me now. Shane set aside the jacket and crossed to his desk. He removed a document. Ancient writing covered it in the same magical script I'd seen in curse texts. The original curse. He read. The person who ends the curse must love all 3 forms equally. You told me that. There is another condition. My stomach dropped. The person must love the beast without knowing he is the king. For several seconds I couldn't breathe. They must accept the monster for what he appears to be, not because they know a crown is hidden behind him. Understanding arrived like freezing water. That's why you didn't tell the others. Yes. That's why you didn't tell me. Yes. Because the moment a candidate knows the beast is also the Alpha King, the condition can no longer be fulfilled. My anger sharpened. But I know. Yes. You let me know you. He didn't answer. You kissed me. You slept beside me. You told me things nobody else knew. My voice rose. You contaminated your own challenge. Pain crossed his face. Yes. You made it impossible for me to break the curse. Yes. Why? He flinched. Why would you do that? Because I was tired. The words exploded from him. Raw. Uncontrolled. I was tired of being alone. Tired of performing. Tired of watching woman after woman enter these rooms, promise things she couldn't possibly mean, then leave. His voice broke. And then you arrived. He stepped closer. Honest. Broken. Unafraid. My eyes burned. For the first time in 5 years, I wanted something more than I wanted freedom from the curse. What? To be known. His answer came instantly. To have someone choose me for who I actually am, not for a crown or a reward. He looked at me like it hurt. I wanted 2 weeks where I wasn't performing. His voice dropped. I wanted you. My breath caught. Even if choosing you destroyed my last chance at survival. The confession should have sounded romantic. It didn't. Not then. It felt like betrayal wrapped in love. You had no right. I know. No. I stepped toward him. You don't understand. I do. You made that choice for both of us. My hands shook. Maybe I could have broken the curse. Maybe if you'd told me nothing, if you'd let me solve the riddle, we could have had years. My voice cracked. But you took that possibility away without asking me. I know. Do you? Tears blurred my vision. I fell in love with all three of you, believing there might be a way to save you. He looked devastated. I thought if I solved the riddle, if I understood what it meant, we'd have time. I shook my head. Now you're telling me it became impossible because you wanted to be known. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't stop you from dying. The voices outside became louder. A knock came from the bedroom door. Your Majesty. Voss. The council is assembled. They're waiting. Jane looked toward the door, then back to me. Torn between king and man. Go. Camilla. You have responsibilities. My voice turned bitter. Can't let a dying curse and a disposable Omega interfere with governing the kingdom. He visibly flinched. Camilla. Go. He went. I stood alone in the bedroom. His shirt hung from my body like a nightgown. Books I'd been reading lay beside the bed. His pillow still carried the shape where his head had rested beside mine. Everything around me proved that the last 2 weeks had happened. Then suddenly, with brutal clarity, I understood the riddle. Given freely, but cannot be taken. Broken by speaking, and kept by silence. Binding without chains. Freeing without keys. A promise. The answer was a promise. I'd been searching through books, studying magical contracts, trying to solve the riddle as though it were an intellectual puzzle. But Jane and I had been living the answer. The promise had been given freely. Neither of us forced the other to stay. It could never be taken because forced loyalty wasn't the same thing. It was broken by speaking, by turning choice into demand, contract, obligation, and it was kept in silence. By remaining, by touching, by returning, by choosing someone again without needing to announce the choice every day. It bound without chains because neither of us was imprisoned. And it freed without keys because for the first time, both of us had escaped the prisons we'd built around ourselves. A promise. I whispered the word, then walked into the receiving room. Voss stood beside 3 council members. Older wolves dressed in formal royal clothing. Their expressions when they noticed me ranged from surprise to open disdain. Jane now wore full royal regalia. He looked every inch the Alpha King. Nothing like the exhausted man who had held me through the night. Miss Perez, Voss began, His Majesty will be occupied with council matters for most of the day. Perhaps you'd like... I solved the riddle. Silence. Jane turned so quickly the movement was almost violent. What? I know the answer. The council members stared. I walked toward him. It's a promise. One silver-haired councilwoman gasped. The answer is a promise. She solved it, the woman whispered. Her gaze moved over me in disbelief. After 347 failures, a Wolfless Omega solved it. Everyone out, Jane said. Your Majesty, the council. Out. Voss immediately ushered them toward the door. When we were alone, Jane faced me. You're right. I know. The answer is a promise. But it doesn't matter. His voice became hollow. You knowing the answer can't break the curse. Because I know the beast is you. Yes. He looked away. Because I was selfish. Because I wanted you more than I wanted survival. I should have remained angry. Instead I asked, do you regret it? He looked at me like I'd struck him. How can you ask that? Because you're dying. I stepped closer. If you regret those 2 weeks, then perhaps giving up the chance to break the curse meant nothing. I don't regret 1 second. He crossed the space between us and held my face. I would choose 2 weeks with you over 100 years alone. My eyes closed. I would choose knowing you over surviving without you. His thumbs brushed my cheeks. That isn't noble. It isn't sensible. It's simply true. Then why do I have to leave? His hands fell. What? The curse won't break. Fine. I took his hands. You're dying. I knew that before I chose you. Camila. So why can't I stay for however long you have? Because watching me die will destroy you. And leaving will destroy me faster. He pulled away. You don't understand what's coming. Then explain it. The transformations are accelerating. His voice shook. Soon the beast may stop changing back. I froze. If that happens, I'll become trapped in that form. And eventually I'll lose myself completely. His eyes filled with fear. I'll become the monster everyone believes I am. He stepped backward. I won't allow you to be beside me when that happens. That should be my decision. No. The king returned in his posture. His voice became command. As Alpha King, I am ordering you to leave these chambers. My heart stopped. Your family's debt is cleared. You are free to live anywhere in the kingdom. Voss will provide enough money for you to begin again. You're ordering me away? I'm protecting you. From myself? Yes. The answer was immediate. Even from yourself. His face became the face of a ruler issuing law instead of a man begging the woman he loved to understand. Voss will escort you from the palace. I could refuse. I could physically remove you. He swallowed. But I won't. Why? Because I promised never to force you. For 1 second, Jane returned beneath the king. Please. His voice softened. Don't make this harder. I stared at the exhaustion and fear on his face. And I understood. He wasn't protecting me from witnessing his death. He was protecting himself from the guilt of making me witness it. Fine. The word tasted like poison. I'll leave. Relief and devastation crossed his face at the same time. Thank you. But remember something. I moved closer. When you're alone and the beast takes everything, remember that I chose you. His eyes closed. All 3 forms. I backed toward the door. No curse. No death. No royal order changes that. My voice trembled. You mattered to me. I opened the door. You still matter. I stepped outside. And you'll matter even when you're gone. Voss waited in the corridor. Miss Perez. His expression remained professional, but his eyes were kind. I can arrange. Just get me out. I walked past him. Before I change my mind and do something stupid like stay. He followed. I never looked backward. I refused to imagine Jane alone in those rooms. Refused to picture the wolf searching for me after dark, unable to understand why I had disappeared. I kept walking. Every step carried me farther from the only place I'd ever truly felt I belonged. Chapter 7. The Cage of Freedom. Voss gave me enough gold to begin a new life anywhere in the kingdom. I chose Millbrook, a quiet border town far from the capital, far enough that nobody would recognize me as the Wolfless Omega who had spent 2 weeks with the cursed king. Far enough, I hoped, that I could become someone else. The cottage Voss arranged was everything I once dreamed of owning. Stone walls, a thatched roof, windows overlooking a meadow filled with wildflowers. Inside, I had a fireplace, a comfortable bed, and an entire spare room that could become a library. Voss had even arranged books. Dozens arrived after me. He'd chosen them based on what I had read in Jane's collection. His Majesty wanted you comfortable, Voss told me while overseeing the delivery. He instructed me to make certain you had everything you required. Except him. Voss's expression became painfully sad. Yes. He lowered his eyes. Except him. That had been 3 months ago. Or perhaps 4. Time moved strangely in Millbrook too, only differently from the palace. Days crawled. Weeks stretched. Months became lifetimes. I had everything I'd once wanted. Freedom, books, quiet, nobody calling me useless, nobody reminding me I couldn't shift, nobody treating me like a burden. The townspeople accepted the story that I was a widow seeking privacy. They didn't ask why I belonged to no pack or why no relatives visited. I was completely free, perfectly alone. And it was destroying me. I opened books and couldn't follow the words. I tried writing and lost myself halfway through every sentence. I planted a garden, cooked, cleaned, walked through the meadow. I performed all the motions of living without feeling alive. Every morning, I woke reaching for a body that wasn't there. Every evening, I found myself waiting for a transformation that would never come. Every night, I dreamed of dark fur, gentle claws, a rough voice calling me Little Omega like the words meant precious instead of broken. Freedom, I discovered, could become another word for loneliness when the person you loved was dying somewhere you were forbidden to be. I tried gathering news from travelers. Carefully. Whenever merchants came from the capital, I asked casual questions. The reports barely changed. The king remained cursed. He was still accepting candidates. Still searching. Still dying. Then 6 months after I left the palace, a merchant mentioned something that turned my blood cold. Heard the king finally found someone. I was buying bread. My hand stopped over my purse. Someone? A princess from the Northern Territories. The merchant smiled as though discussing ordinary gossip. Beautiful, apparently. Powerful bloodline. They say she's different. Might actually be the one who breaks the curse. I thanked her. I walked home in a daze. Jane had found someone. The thought stalked me for days. Part of me wanted to be happy. If she saved him, he would live. Wasn't that what I wanted? Another part of me wanted to scream. How had he replaced me when I couldn't survive one morning without thinking about him? Mostly, however, I felt numb. Perhaps the princess could succeed where I couldn't. Perhaps Jane would hide everything from her this time. Perhaps she could love the beast without knowing the crown beneath it. Perhaps he had learned not to be selfish. More months passed. The merchant returned occasionally with updates. The princess was still at the palace, still trying. The entire kingdom was apparently waiting to see whether she would finally free their king. I forced myself to build something resembling a life. I began teaching several local children their letters, the way I'd once taught pups in Riverside. I made myself eat, made myself sleep, made myself tend the cottage. But none of it felt real. I was a ghost haunting a life that looked beautiful from outside. My heart had never left those palace chambers. Exactly 1 year after I'd been sent away, Voss knocked on my door. I was sitting near the window holding a book I hadn't actually read when I heard him. For one impossible second, I thought Jane had come. Maybe the curse was broken. Maybe he wanted to see me. Maybe he had only days left. Maybe he had changed his mind. I opened the door. Voss stood there. He looked older. The lines around his eyes were deeper. Miss Perez. His voice was quiet. May I come inside? I let him enter. I offered tea, even though I had no energy to prepare any. He didn't waste time. The king is getting married. My body went cold. 3 weeks from now. The princess? Yes. I sat slowly. So she broke the curse. No. I stared at him. The curse remains. Then why is he marrying her? The princess agreed to become queen despite his condition. Voss's expression remained carefully neutral. His Majesty believes he has a responsibility to secure the kingdom's succession before the curse consumes him entirely. Of course. Duty. Responsibility. The same things Jane had always valued. The same things he had chosen after sending me away. Why are you telling me? Because His Majesty asked me to. Voss removed an envelope from his jacket. He wanted you to hear directly from me rather than through rumor. He held it toward me. And he asked that I give you this. My name was written across the front. Jane's handwriting. Sharp, angular, distinctive. My hands trembled when I accepted it. Should I read this now? That is entirely your decision. Voss stood. But there is something else you should know. I looked up. The king is very ill. My throat tightened. The transformations occur every day now, sometimes several times in a single day. He paused. He spends more time in beast form than human form. How long? The healers believe months. I closed my eyes. The princess knows? She knows everything relevant to the marriage. She knows he's cursed and dying. And she's still marrying him. For political alliance and because she believes she can reduce his suffering. Voss moved toward the door. I must return for wedding preparations. Voss. He stopped. I hated myself for asking. Is he happy with her? The sadness in Voss's eyes nearly broke me. The king hasn't been happy since you left, Miss Perez. His voice softened. The princess is kind, brave, beautiful. He opened the door. But she isn't you. After he left, I sat alone with the letter. I should have burned it unopened. Instead, I broke the seal. Camila, I don't know whether you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it into the fire. But there are things I need to say, even if you never hear them. I'm getting married. Not because I want to. The kingdom requires stability, and I'm running out of time to provide it. The princess is good and kind. She possesses everything people believe a queen should possess. I believe she'll rule well when I'm gone. She's not you. I know how cruel that is to write. Cruel to her, cruel to you, cruel to me. But you once demanded honesty from me, and I've tried to honor that promise even when honesty cuts. The beast asks for you every night. He still doesn't understand why you're gone. He cannot understand that I sent you away. He searches the chambers. When he can't find you, he makes a sound I never want to hear again. Half howl, half sob. The wolf is quieter. He lies where you used to sit and waits for hours as if patience might eventually make you appear. The man understands why you had to leave. He knows sending you away was necessary. He knows it was the only way I could protect you. Understanding has not made anything hurt less. I'm not writing to ask you to return. You deserve freedom, peace, a chance at whatever normal life you choose. I'm writing because you should know that you mattered. You still matter. You will matter when I'm gone. You solved the riddle. You understood what 347 women did not. And although your answer didn't break the curse, you broke something else. You broke through every wall I'd built around myself. You showed me what it meant to be known. Thank you for that. Thank you for 2 weeks of being chosen. Thank you for seeing the beast and staying. Thank you for making me want to live when death had begun to feel easier. I hope you find happiness, Camila. Real happiness. Not the kind that appears perfect from outside while remaining empty within. I hope you find someone who sees you the way I saw you. Someone who chooses you the way you chose me. And if you ever think about us, about those 2 weeks inside rooms where time seemed to stop, know that I think about you too, every day, every transformation, every moment until the curse finally takes me. Yours, even though I have no right to be, Jane. I read the letter 3 times. Then I carried it to the fireplace. I intended to burn it, to destroy the final connection before it destroyed me. I couldn't. Instead, I folded it carefully. I placed it in the small box containing the few things I truly valued. The silver token Voss had given me before I entered the king's chambers. A flower pressed from the meadow outside my cottage. And now Jane's letter. A letter from a dying king who was about to marry someone else while still thinking of me. I should have felt betrayed, replaced, angry. Instead, I felt empty. 3 weeks. That was what Voss had said. 3 weeks until the wedding. I looked around the cottage. The comfortable rooms. The library. The perfect isolation. Then I looked at the silver token. a token capable of carrying me through almost any guarded door in the palace. And I decided. I couldn't remain in Millbrook wondering forever, but I couldn't destroy his wedding either. I couldn't demand that he choose me instead of doing what he believed necessary for the kingdom, so I would do something between staying away and interfering. I would attend, not to object, not to stop him. I would witness it. I would see him one final time. I would allow myself to feel whatever seeing him caused. Then I would leave. For good. It was foolish, painful, almost certainly a terrible idea, but Jane had taught me that sometimes choosing connection, even when connection could hurt you, required more courage than hiding somewhere safe. So I would be brave once more. I would travel to the capital. I would watch the cursed Alpha King marry his northern princess. Then I would finally say goodbye inside my own heart. 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to prepare myself. It wasn't nearly enough. Chapter 8. The Promise Kept. The capital looked more beautiful than I remembered. Perhaps the city had changed, or perhaps grief had made me forget how to notice beauty. My hired carriage moved through streets decorated for the royal wedding. The king's crest hung from every building. Flowers covered doors and balconies. Music filled crowded squares. People ate, drank, and celebrated with the desperate joy of subjects hoping their dying king might find happiness before the end. I had dressed carefully, not in the gray clothes of Riverside, not in the plain dresses I'd worn in Millbrook. I wore a deep green gown Voss had included among my things when I left the palace. The color brightened my eyes and brought life back into skin made pale by a year spent hiding. I braided my hair. Around my neck hung the silver royal token, visible, but not ostentatious. I wasn't coming to hide. I wasn't coming to be seen. I was coming to say goodbye. The palace grounds overflowed with guests, nobles from every pack, foreign dignitaries, royal guards, servants moving through the crowds. I became another face among hundreds and made my way toward the great hall. 2 guards checked invitations at the entrance. I had none. I showed the silver token. One guard's eyes widened. He stepped aside immediately. Inside, white flowers covered nearly everything. Roses, lilies, other delicate blooms I couldn't name. Candles lined the aisle. Every seat seemed occupied. At the far end stood an elaborate altar, and beside it stood Jane. My breath caught. He wore full royal regalia, dark formal clothing embroidered with silver, a crown shining beneath the chandeliers. To everyone else he probably looked powerful, untouchable. The perfect Alpha King. I saw what they didn't. How carefully he held himself. The tension in his shoulders. The shadows beneath his eyes. The way even standing seemed painful. He was visibly dying, and the entire kingdom had agreed to pretend otherwise. I found a seat in the rear corner, somewhere I could see without being immediately noticed. Music began. The doors opened. The princess entered. She was beautiful. Of course she was. Long blonde hair woven with flowers. A gown worth more than my cottage. Grace in every movement. She smiled at the assembled nobles with the confidence of someone born for royal halls. She looked exactly like a queen. She looked nothing like me. I watched her walk toward Jane, watched him take her hand, watched them face the officiant. My chest filled with grief, acceptance, love, and loss, so tangled I couldn't separate one from another. The officiant spoke about duty, honor, the sacred bonds of mating and marriage. I barely heard him. This was the moment Jane became someone else's. Soon our 2 weeks would become a memory. A strange chapter from before he married someone more appropriate. I almost left. I could have disappeared before the vows, before they kissed, before anyone noticed me. But I had promised myself I would stay until goodbye became real. So I stayed. The officiant reached the traditional question. If anyone present holds lawful objection to this union, speak now, or forever remain silent. Nobody moved. Why would they? This marriage was duty, politics, a dying king securing stability. The officiant continued. Then by the authority granted to me by the moon goddess and the wolf council, I declare. The windows exploded. Glass shattered inward. Wolves dressed in black tactical clothing crashed through the openings. Crossbows rose. Silver-tipped bolts gleamed beneath the lights. Their blades were coated with wolfsbane. Everything they carried had been designed for one purpose: to kill werewolves. Assassins. The hall erupted. Nobles screamed and scattered. Royal guards shifted while running. The princess stumbled backward. One assassin seized her and dragged her against him as a shield. Jane moved. Fast. Faster than I'd ever seen. His body began changing. Not into the wolf, into the beast. In public. For the first time. Claws erupted. Dark fur spread. Fury replaced royal control. Hundreds of people watched their king become the thing he'd hidden for 5 years. But there were too many attackers, too many silver weapons. Then I saw one assassin raise a crossbow. He aimed directly at Jane's chest. The bolt was coated in silver poison. I didn't think. I ran. I pushed through the panicked crowd, jumped over an overturned chair. The assassin released the bolt. I threw myself between them. Pain exploded through my shoulder. My body spun. Silver buried itself in my flesh. I gasped. Jane caught me before I hit the floor. Camilla! His voice was half human, half beast. Entirely horrified. What are you doing here? I gritted my teeth. Shut up. Pain burned down my arm. And fight. The beast snarled. He lowered me carefully to the marble, then turned. What followed was violence. Jane tore into the assassins with renewed fury. Royal guards rallied around him. Men who had entered expecting to kill a cursed king suddenly faced the very monster they'd hoped never to see. The princess's guards pulled her to safety. Some assassins were subdued. Others didn't survive. Through everything, I remained on the floor, while silver burned through my veins. My vision darkened at the edges. This wasn't how I'd imagined saying goodbye. When the fighting stopped, Jane returned immediately, still in beast form. His enormous clawed hands touched my face with the same gentleness I'd remembered every night in Millbrook. Why? His growl shook. Why would you do that? Because I love you. The words came easily now. Maybe because I thought I was dying. All 3 of you. His eyes widened. I've loved you since you held me while I cried. My voice weakened. And I wasn't going to stand there and watch you die when I could stop it. You're dying instead. Better me than you. I tried to smile. At least one of us survives. No. The word was both command and plea. Camilla, stay with me. Not exactly my choice. My breathing became shallow. The silver. I can feel it. Someone shouted for healers. Voss's voice cut through the chaos, demanding medical assistance. But my body was growing colder. Silver killed werewolves quickly, except I wasn't really a werewolf. I was a wolfless omega who had never shifted. Maybe that was why the poison felt so vicious. Jane's beast form began receding. The man emerged. He gathered me into his arms. I can't lose you. His voice broke. Not like this. Not after finally seeing you again. You were marrying someone else. I tried to breathe through the pain. You already lost me. I never wanted her. I stared at him. The marriage was duty, politics. Everything I convinced myself mattered more than happiness. His tears began falling. But seeing you here, he shook his head. I would have stopped the ceremony. What? If I'd known you were here, I would have chosen you. Something warm fought against the cold inside me. Really? Really? He pressed his forehead against mine. I love you, Camilla. My eyes closed. I've loved you since you asked permission to sit in a room that was supposed to belong to you. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Since you stayed when you should have run. Since you solved what 347 women couldn't because you understood what I was actually asking. A promise. Yes. His tears touched my skin. The answer was a promise. To choose each other. To stay when staying becomes hard. To love without guarantee. His fingers shook against my cheek. You kept it. Even after you sent me away. Especially then. His voice broke again. You came to watch me marry another woman just because you needed to see me one last time. Sounds pathetic. Brave. He leaned close. Camila, listen to me. The curse can't be broken. I was wrong. I struggled to focus. What? Something changed in his face. Understanding. Then hope. Wild and impossible. What if loving the beast without knowing he's king was never the true final condition? You showed me the curse. I showed you what I believed it meant. His eyes widened as realization built. What if the curse was never truly testing whether another person could accept me? I tried to breathe. Then what was it testing? Whether I could accept myself. He looked around the ruined hall. Hundreds of nobles. Shattered windows. Blood. The entire kingdom's elite had just watched him become a beast. I transformed publicly. Yes. I showed everyone exactly what I am, because protecting you mattered more than protecting my secret. His breath broke into something halfway between laughter and a sob. I chose love over control. The room seemed to change. Jane. I chose vulnerability over duty. Warmth moved through the hall. Not from fire. Not from sunlight. Something unseen. Something breaking. Jane looked down at himself. The curse. His voice filled with disbelief. The curse is breaking. I felt it too. The cold silver still burned in my shoulder, but the poison stopped spreading, then slowly began retreating. The three forms. Jane gasped. They aren't fighting. He looked at me with wonder. They're just me. He laughed through tears. All of me, together. Healers rushed around us. They removed the bolt. Pain exploded through my shoulder again. A cloth soaked in medicinal herbs pressed against the wound. Someone forced bitter liquid down my throat. It burned. Then warmth spread through my chest, pushing back the poison. Through everything, Jane refused to release me. I've got you. He repeated it every few seconds. I've got you. He kissed my forehead. And I'm never letting you go again. When I could finally breathe without pain stabbing through my ribs, one thought returned. The princess. Jane blinked. What about her? You were marrying her. For the first time since the attack, he smiled. I was in the middle of making the greatest mistake of my life. Jane. Then you, ridiculous, impossible, brave woman, threw yourself in front of a silver bolt. I frowned. So you're not getting married? Oh, I'm getting married. His smile widened. Just not to her. I stared. He raised his voice enough for half the ruined hall to hear. Camila Perez, will you marry me? People nearby went silent. Not for politics. His hand closed around mine. Not for duty. His eyes held mine. Not because of a challenge or a curse. His voice softened. Because I love you. My eyes filled. Because you're brilliant and brave and you're the only person who has ever seen every part of me and chosen to stay. He lifted my hand. Because 2 weeks with you meant more to me than a lifetime without you. Yes. He stopped. Yes? Obviously yes. I managed a weak smile. But perhaps you should ask the princess whether she minds you canceling the wedding she was almost murdered at. I'll compensate her kingdom generously. He sounded completely serious. Jane, I'm king. I'm permitted to do that. That is a terrible abuse of power. Are you going to stop me? I looked at him. The man who had prepared to die alone to protect me. The man whose curse had broken because he finally chose vulnerability over hiding. The man holding me as though I were irreplaceable. No. My smile widened. I'm going to marry you instead. The healers finally forced Jane to move enough for them to treat my wound properly. The silver had caused damage, but not permanent damage. I would live. I needed rest and medical supervision, but I would recover. Voss appeared nearby, looking exhausted, disheveled, and strangely pleased. Your Majesty. Jane looked up. The assassins have been subdued. The princess is secure and has sent word that she is unharmed. Good. The council is demanding an explanation. Jane's expression flattened. And approximately 300 nobles just witnessed you transform into a beast during your own wedding. Let them talk. Jane stood. Summon the council to the throne room. Immediately? Immediately. Then he looked at me. And Miss Perez comes with me. Voss smiled. That's not negotiable, Jane added. As you wish, Your Majesty. An hour later, I stood beside Jane in the throne room. My shoulder was bandaged. The pain remained, but I could stand. Council members filled the chamber alongside nobles and foreign dignitaries. The northern princess stood to one side, remarkably composed for a woman whose wedding had turned into an assassination attempt. Jane held my hand openly. He had changed into practical clothing, and something about him truly was different. His movements were smoother. His body no longer looked as though each breath required effort. Whole. By now, Jane began, you have all heard rumors about the curse. The chamber quieted. You've heard that I could transform into 3 different forms, that 347 women entered my challenge and failed. Murmurs spread through the room. What you have not heard is why the curse existed. His gaze moved across the council. The woman who cursed me came seeking sanctuary. He described the hunters, his refusal, the political danger. I made the correct choice for a king. He paused, but the wrong choice for a person. Nobody spoke. The curse fragmented me so I would understand what it felt like to be divided against myself. His fingers tightened around mine. To be viewed as monstrous even while trying to do what I believed was right. He looked toward the council. For 5 years, I believed freedom required finding someone who could love all 3 forms. His gaze came to me. I was wrong. The curse required me to accept all 3 forms. The room went completely silent. To stop hiding behind authority, control, duty, and perfect performance. His voice carried naturally through the chamber. To become vulnerable enough to let myself be seen, even if people rejected or feared what they saw. He lifted our joined hands. Camila Perez stepped in front of an assassin's silver bolt intended for me. Every eye turned toward me. And in that instant, I cared more about saving her than concealing what I was. His voice hardened with certainty. I transformed before all of you. He faced the council. I chose love over control. Vulnerability over power. He drew me closer. That is what broke the curse. The silence was absolute. Finally, the silver-haired councilwoman rose. Your Majesty, are you saying the curse is gone? Yes. You can no longer become the wolf or beast? I can. Confusion moved through the chamber, but they are no longer separate selves struggling for control. Jane touched his chest. They are parts of me. His voice softened. Integrated. Whole. Another council member stood. And Miss Perez? Jane's expression sharpened. What about her? She has no pack. The man's discomfort became obvious. No wolf, no political connection. She is the woman who solved a riddle 347 others could not. Jane's voice turned cold. She saw me at my worst and stayed. The room seemed to shrink beneath his authority. She took a silver bolt meant for me without hesitation. His arm moved around me. And she is the woman I love. If anyone objects to her becoming queen, speak. Nobody breathed loudly enough to hear. But understand this. His voice dropped. An objection to her is an objection to me. He glanced at me. We are a package deal. Nobody objected. Then the northern princess stepped forward. All eyes moved toward her. She looked at Jane, then me. For whatever my opinion is worth, Your Majesty, I believe you chose correctly. Jane looked surprised. I came here from duty. I was prepared to marry a dying king because the alliance benefited our kingdoms. She smiled slightly. But watching you reveal what you feared most in order to protect her? Her gaze softened. That is the kind of love people write songs about. She inclined her head. I won't interfere with it. Jane bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Highness. Your kingdom will be generously compensated for the diplomatic embarrassment. Keep the compensation. He blinked. Just invite me to the real wedding. Laughter moved through the chamber. Tension finally broke. Council members exchanged looks. One by one, they nodded. The silver-haired woman sighed. Very well. If the curse is broken and the king has chosen his queen, the council will recognize the union. Then she pointed at Jane. But I recommend a significantly shorter engagement. This kingdom has experienced enough drama. Agreed. Jane smiled at me. We'll marry within the month. Within the week. Every person in the room looked at me. Jane's eyebrows rose. What? I've already waited a year. I shrugged with my uninjured shoulder. I'm not waiting another month, because the council needs emotional preparation. Jane's smile became radiant. Within the week. Later, after the council dispersed and the palace finally grew quiet, Jane and I returned to his chambers. The same rooms where we'd spent 2 weeks falling in love. The same windows. The same library. The same bed. He drew me carefully down beside him. I still can't believe you came to the wedding. I needed to say goodbye. What were you thinking? That I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd seen you once more. I leaned against him. And apparently I'm just as foolish as you when it comes to choosing connection over safety. Completely foolish. He kissed me softly, careful of my injury. Thank you for being foolish. Thank you for loving me enough to break a curse. The curse broke because I finally understood what it was teaching me. His hands framed my face. But even if it hadn't, I waited. Even if I were still dying, I would choose you now. My chest tightened. I would have stopped that wedding the moment I knew you were in the hall. That's terrible leadership. Probably, I laughed. But I'm learning that being a good king doesn't require sacrificing everything human for duty. His forehead touched mine. Sometimes choosing love makes you stronger. I rested against him and listened. His heartbeat was steady. No hesitation. No failing rhythm. The riddle. What about it? You never officially told me whether I was right. Jane smiled and crossed to his desk. He removed the original sheet of paper. The same riddle I'd stared at a year earlier. You were right. A promise. Yes. He handed it to me. But not merely any promise. I looked at the words. The promise to choose one another. His voice softened. To stay when staying is difficult. To love without demanding a guaranteed ending. We kept it. Yes. Even after you sent me away. Yes. Even while you were preparing to marry someone else. He winced. You'll be mentioning that for the next 50 years, won't you? Probably longer. He laughed. We kept choosing each other even when we weren't together. I folded the paper. Jane touched my hand. Keep it. Why? To remember that some riddles aren't solved through logic. His eyes warmed. They have to be lived. I placed the paper beside the silver token I'd carried for a year. What happens now? Now? He leaned back. We rule together. That sounds exhausting. We make decisions together. We attempt to build a kingdom that treats people who don't fit traditional expectations with more humanity. I smiled. We add more books to the library. Obviously. We continue arguing about poetry and prose. Poetry still wins. Incorrect. The wolf naps in the sunlight. He'll insist. And the beast asks uncomfortable questions. Constantly. I leaned into him. And we live. For as long as we get. That sounds perfect. Terrifying. Also perfect. We sat beside each other as evening settled over the capital. Tomorrow would bring wedding preparations, diplomatic conversations, council sessions, responsibilities I could barely imagine. But that night, we were simply two people who had chosen each other, despite every sensible reason not to. Jane? Yes? If someone asked you the question now, why did you come, what would you say? He thought for a moment, then smiled. I'd say I came to learn that being whole doesn't mean being perfect. His arm tightened around me. It means allowing someone to see your broken pieces and trusting they might stay. And have you learned it? I'm learning. He pulled me closer. Every day with you. Night covered the city. Stars appeared above the palace. The impossible had become real. The divided had become whole. And somewhere inside Jane, I could almost imagine three voices finally speaking together. Man, wolf, beast. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for staying. Epilogue. The promise made whole. 6 months after the wedding that almost wasn't, I stood in the royal library sorting newly acquired books on magical theory. My library. I still struggled with that phrase. Morning sunlight poured through the windows, turning the shelves gold. You're doing it again. Jane's voice came from the doorway. I looked up. He leaned against the frame wearing simple trousers and a shirt. No crown. No royal coat. We had learned quickly that being king and queen didn't require looking royal every second. Doing what? That thing where you look around like someone is about to tell you there's been a mistake and send you back to Millbrook. He crossed the room. This is your library. He wrapped his arms around me. Your palace. His lips touched my hair. Your home. I leaned into him. Old habits. We have time to break them. His voice carried an ease I once thought I'd never hear. All the time we need. The curse breaking hadn't only saved his life. It had returned a future to both of us. The healers confirmed his body was no longer deteriorating. Transformations no longer tore him apart. Jane could become the wolf or beast whenever he chose, then return without pain. The forms weren't separate minds anymore. They were expressions of one whole person. The kingdom had also adjusted to its unusual queen, a woman with no pack name, no wolf, no noble blood, the Wolfless Omega who solved the king's challenge and married him 3 days after assassins nearly killed us both. Some nobles still whispered. They simply whispered more respectfully now, especially after I helped negotiate a trade agreement with the Eastern Territories that brought new prosperity to half the kingdom. Being underestimated for 22 years, it turned out, made someone remarkably good at seeing opportunities everyone else ignored. The council wants to discuss your education program again, Jane said. What about it? They're considering expansion to every rural pack. They should. I returned a book to the shelf. Every child should be taught to read, not only noble children. This is why they're frightened of you. I looked at him. Because I want children educated? Because you make sense. It leaves them very little room to argue without sounding foolish. I laughed into his chest. Is that your diplomatic way of calling me difficult? You're perfect. He kissed my temple. They're still learning to keep up. We remained there for a while. These were my favorite moments. Not ceremonies. Not grand dinners. Not court functions. Moments where we were simply Camila and Jane. The latest letter from your father arrived this morning. My body stiffened. Jane noticed. He wants to visit. Of course he does. He says he wants to apologize. To see how you're doing. Garrett Perez had been writing for months. Once news spread that his expendable daughter had become queen, suddenly I was worth remembering. What do you think I should do? Jane immediately shook his head. That decision belongs entirely to you. I waited. If you want to see him, I'll support you. His mouth curved. If you want to burn every letter unread, I'll support that too. And if I invite him here just to tell him exactly what I think of him before the entire court, Jane grinned, I would support that enthusiastically and probably enjoy it far too much. I considered the possibilities. Once I would have wanted that confrontation. I would have wanted my father to see what I became, to understand what he threw away. But I no longer needed him to recognize my value. I'll write back. Jane waited. I'll thank him for reaching out. And wish him well. I exhaled, then politely refused the visit. Why? Because the best revenge isn't forcing him to see what I've become. I looked around the library. It's living so completely that eventually I stop caring whether he sees it. Pride warmed Jane's face. He made his choice. I touched Jane's hand. And I've made mine. He doesn't get to enter this simply because the rest of the kingdom suddenly decided I'm important. Jane nodded. Have I mentioned recently that you're extraordinary? Not within the last hour. I frowned dramatically. I was becoming concerned. He kissed me. Soft, warm, full of the kind of promise that no longer frightened either of us. When we separated, I caught the wolf flickering playfully behind his eyes. Later, Jane sighed. The wolf disagrees. We have a council meeting in an hour. The wolf doesn't care about council meetings. The wolf can wait. Jane laughed. Rich. Unguarded. Fine. He stepped backward. But tonight? Tonight? All of me belongs to you. All three? His smile softened. All three. That evening, after we successfully convinced the council to approve universal education, despite several nobles protesting the expense, I returned to our private chambers. Jane was already there, in wolf form, sprawled across the bed as though he owned the entire thing, which, technically, he did. I changed into comfortable clothes, one of his old shirts and soft leggings, then climbed beside him. The wolf immediately rolled onto his back and demanded affection. You're ridiculous. His tail struck the mattress. And shameless. Another thump. I rubbed his belly anyway. This had become our life. Mornings usually belonged to the man. Ruling. Meetings. Royal decisions. Afternoons depended on whatever the day required. Evenings often belonged to the wolf and beast, the parts of Jane that valued presence more than speech. As I scratched behind the wolf's ears, I thought about everything that had changed. I had walked into these chambers expecting to fail, the wolfless Omega who took up as little space as possible. Now I sat beside a king as his equal. I had faced a council and convinced them to educate children they previously ignored. Jane had changed too. The king who once fractured beneath the weight of three forms now moved between them freely. We had saved each other. Not in the simple fairy tale way where love erased every problem. In smaller ways, daily ways. The magic of continuing to choose someone. The wolf began changing. His body shifted smoothly now. No snapping bones, no torn skin, no agony. The beast emerged, enormous, dark, still intimidating enough that most people would run. He gathered me into his arms. Happy? His rough voice vibrated through my chest. Yes. I touched his face. Are you? He was quiet. After 5 years of searching, his claws moved carefully into my hair. I'm finally whole. His head lowered. Finally home. Thank you for staying, little Omega. I smiled. Thank you for seeing us when everyone else looked away. Thank you for holding me when I cried. He rumbled. For giving me a library. I rested my hand over his heart. For choosing me over duty. His heartbeat remained strong beneath my palm. Thank you, I whispered, for keeping the promise we never had to speak. We stayed together until the beast shifted back into the man. Jane pulled me beneath the blankets. Our bodies settled together with the familiarity of home. I love you, he murmured against my hair. I love you too. I smiled. All three of you. We aren't three anymore. He kissed my forehead. Just one very lucky king who found his queen. A lucky Omega who found her home. Both. His arms tightened. We're both lucky. Sleep began pulling me under. One final time, I thought about the words that had changed everything. I am given freely, but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking, and kept by silence. I bind without chains, and free without keys. A promise. Not the kind written into contracts. Not the kind demanded by kings. The promise Jane and I had made without ever needing to announce it. The promise we kept by choice. Through presence. Through returning. Through staying when staying hurt. Some riddles cannot be solved through books or logic. Some answers cannot be discovered by searching for the correct words. Some riddles have to be lived. Some truths have to be chosen. And some promises, the ones worth keeping, never need to be spoken aloud at all.